Welcome to the GSMC Car Podcast, the show that takes you on a journey to the automotive world. We talk about the latest news, from new makes and models to new technology to all of the must-have options available. Whether you're a fan of the old classics, love the latest models and technology, or have never met a vehicle you didn't want to work on, the GSMC Car Podcast has something for every car enthusiast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Car Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, David Lucy Mabel. Welcome, car lovers, to this week's podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the new Nissan 400Z, or at least the rumors we've been hearing circulate about the new Z car from Nissan, along with why I'm slightly concerned about Nissan's declining quality over the years, and we'll also discuss the history of the Z cars. And if you stay tuned till the very end, I will tell you my thoughts on the Z car and what my favorite JDM cars of all time are. So, what do you mean by rumors, you may ask? Allow me to explain. You see, Nissan has been very slow with coming out with a new Z car. In fact, the current iteration of the Z car has been around for 11 years. 11 years. That's 2 ones, folks. Almost, actually, over a decade. And that's over a decade in a market that's constantly changing. But this shouldn't be surprising, though. Nissan has quite a bit of ancient, vehicles in its lineup, at least ancient by car standards. For example, the current Nissan Frontier has been around for 16 years. They came out with it in 2004. This is the second generation, and for some reason, for the American market, they haven't bothered to change it. I mean, overseas, it's known as the Nissan Navara or something, and it's in like its 4th generation. But for some reason, over here in the United States, it's still in generation number 2, and it's been going on for 16 years, and frankly, everybody's tired of seeing it. For example, not only is the Nissan Frontier, but is some of their other cars too. I mean, you know, the other cars have basically just been updated platforms of things that already existed. I mean, it's getting ridiculous at this point. I mean, this is almost unheard of in the car industry, especially for Japanese cars. I mean, take Toyota, for example. Toyota is constantly coming out with new iterations of their vehicles. There's a new Camry every 3 or 4 years. There's a new Corolla every 3 or 4 years. But, I mean, Nissan is just... Oh man, Nissan's lagging behind. Nissan needs to get up to date with its technology, its brand image almost. I mean, not to say that Nissan is getting bad, but Nissan is getting stale, Nissan is getting boring, and Toyota is getting more exciting, and Toyota is, you know, catching up with the times, and Nissan really isn't. And not only that, this also gives me good reason to believe that even though Nissan says that the new Z car is going to come out in probably 2021 or something, I'm not very confident about that, because they've been teasing us about the new Z car for at least the past 5 or 6 years. I mean, you know, now that they say, oh, you know, as of May 2020, we're going to release the new Z car, blah, 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 and we're going to put it into production next year. No, we don't even know what the thing looks like. I mean, like, Nissan, I'm not buying it. But moving on, let me not get ahead of myself. We actually don't know what year the new Nissan Z is going to come out. Just like I said before, Nissan hasn't actually confirmed anything. I would safely assume that it's going to come out within the next year or two, but with the way the world is going, I mean, the COVID-19 situation and the fact that Nissan is not performing as well as it used to, in terms of quality, in terms of reliability, in terms of being up to date. I mean, like I said, I know better than to believe that the Nissan, 400Z is going to come out without any reasonable delay. Here's what we know so far, though. Apparently, it's going to have 400 horsepower, hence the name 400Z. Before, the number that used to come before the Z in the Z cars used to denote engine displacement. For example, the 370Z was powered by a 3.7-liter V6. The 350Z, 3.5-liter V6. 300Z, 3-liter V6, so on and so forth. But apparently, this is going to be based off not the engine displacement, which, surprise, we don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be the horsepower numbers. That's about it. We don't know anything else that is concrete and able to be proven without a shadow of a doubt. Nissan has been so secretive in releasing information about the new Z that they've only released a silhouette of what it's going to look like. A silhouette so cryptic, in fact, that each of the major car magazines have a different rendering of the design. Some designs look traditional with modern lines, very reminiscent of a retro style, looking much like the 240Z, the Fairlady Z of the old days. Some look like an updated version of the 370Z, which frankly I'm so tired of looking at. I sincerely hope that's not the case. And some look entirely new, not like the old and not like the new either. The ones that I saw that looked entirely new, they looked very futuristic, which I appreciated because, it looks like Nissan might actually want to start spicing up their product line again. I mean, Nissan, as much as I hate to say it, Nissan's getting stale. I mean, it's about time that they come out with something that's interesting, that's young, that's hip, that is not a boring sedan or a boring crossover. I mean, come on, Nissan. Like, Toyota has TRD models of the Avalon. I mean, the Avalon, which was known as the Japanese Buick. They've got a TRD model of it. And then Nissan, nothing. Okay, so anyway. It's also currently been rumored that this one is going to be built on a heavily updated platform, heavily updated version of the new or the current Nissan 370Z's platform. I don't mean to gripe. I don't mean to complain. That's not super impressive to me, but I think they should just come up with an entirely new platform instead of milking the same one they've had for I don't know how many years now. But I mean, I'm sure Nissan is going to be able to update it successfully, and I'm sure they'll be able to make it fun, fast, and gripping just like the other Z cars have been. Here's a bit of exciting news that actually makes me appreciate the announcement of the new Z car coming up within the foreseeable future. In this respect, I actually respect it, and I actually am excited for it in a sense. It will come with an optional manual transmission. This is really, 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 really good news. If Nissan doesn't do anything right for the next 10 years, we know that at least they've done this thing right. This was a welcome surprise for the car community. Too many times have automakers, especially these days, rejected the notion of a manual transmission altogether. Though I've never driven a real manual before, I can say with great confidence that a manual transmission allows you to be connected with your car. I mean, it may not be the faster alternative anymore because of how technology has advanced with the dual clutch transmissions now and the fact that technology can shift gears faster than a human can now. But they allow the driver to be one with the car, if I may sound all esoteric and whatnot. I mean, it is it is the sensation that people are looking for when they buy a sports car. You don't buy a sports car for the car to do everything for you. You buy a sports car because you want to feel connected with the car. You buy a sports car because you want to feel at one with the car. You want to buy a sports car because you want to do the work yourself. You want to push in that clutch, shift gears, tear up a corner. I mean, that's what you buy a sports car for. And the fact that the new 400Z is rumored to come out with a manual transmission whenever it finally hits the market, I mean, that's wonderful news, because it's keeping its heritage of its legendary sports car pedigree. I mean, the 370Z is the current one, but the 370Z has a long, royal lineage, if I can put it that way, as far as Nissan sports cars go. You'll hear more about this in my next segment later on down the podcast, but the Nissan Z car, I would say, of the trifecta of sports cars offered by Nissan, is probably one of the most successful. I mean, you have the Silvia, which is no longer in production. You have the Skyline, which the Skyline is a sedan, but the Skyline also offered a performance model known as the Skyline Gtr, which is no longer in production, but the GTR has come to replace the Skyline GTR. And you've got the Z car. The Z car is the only one that, of the original three, that's still alive, if we're going to be technical. I mean, Skylines are now all sedans. The GTR has replaced the Skyline in the modern age, and the Silvia was not produced again or was stopped production in 2002. The Z car is the only one that's still alive. So the fact that Nissan has chosen a sports car line that's affordable and that is able to be continued, that is able to be appealing, and they decided to offer it with a manual transmission is really impressive news to me, which frankly, it offers me a glimmer of hope. I mean, just like some of the American car companies, I know Lincoln is fundamentally different from Nissan, but it kind of reminds me of what Lincoln and Ford had gone through. I mean, for probably the late 90s into the 2000s and even into the early 2010s. I mean, Lincoln and Ford were nothing special. I mean, quality was bad. The reliability was questionable unless you had a Panther platform. I mean, it wasn't anything great. But in the 2010s, I would say halfway through the 2010s, to the late 2010s, Lincoln and Ford started stepping up their game. And they started coming out with new models that were exciting. They controlled their quality. They had great things. And now look at Ford and Lincoln today. So I have hope for Nissan. I have hope. And I believe that if the new 400Z is actually going to come out and they're not going to make us wait another 10 years after this official announcement, I mean, I think Nissan might be able to pick itself off of the ground in a sense, or rise from the ashes. Even though it's not floundering per se, Nissan is still a successful car company, but they've gotten stale. Nissan was never stale. Nissan was always kind of sporty, always kind of cool. I mean, they had sports cars. They were fun. I mean, now Nissan's gotten stale. They're just regular old commuter cars. So I feel like with the launch of the new 400Z, it'll be great. And not only that, I forgot to mention the fact that the Nissan Z is going to be cheaper than the new Toyota Supra. As many of you all may already know, the new Toyota Supra just came out last year, and it's a joint partnership or joint venture, however that's described in the car world, between Toyota and BMW, of all people. In fact, the new Supra shares its underpinnings and its engine with the BMW Z4. So, yeah, I've got gripes about that. But the fact is that we've got a Supra that is awesome. We've got a Supra that is powerful. We've got a Supra that is legendary, and it's finally coming back to the market. And Nissan has actually been able to make their car cheaper than that. And that's also really exciting, because when you hear Z car, a whole line of cars from years past that have been great gets conjured up. Same thing when you hear Supra, a whole line of cars, especially the 96 Supras with the 2JZ engines that were absolutely legendary. I mean, a whole pedigree pops up into your mind. So I think Nissan is announcing the new Z car in time. They waited until the hype died down from Toyota Supra, and then they told us, like, actually, look, we're actually going to be coming back with our new car, if you know, so to speak, even though we never discontinued it, but we'll be coming out with a new version of our legendary car. And now that the hype is sort of dialed down from the Toyota Supra, now people, once they find out more, are going to be talking about the new Z car. They'll be like, oh, did you hear about the new Z car? Oh, wonder what it's going to be like, blah, blah, blah. So perhaps, and you know, this may be very well what Nissan's strategy is. Perhaps they're doing this on purpose. They're not releasing a lot of information so that it's cool, it's new, it's mysterious, it's elusive. And so people can gain more excitement about it. How well it's working, I can't tell you. But stay tuned. Because after the break, I'm going to discuss my concerns about Nissan quality over the years, especially after their merger with a Renault back in the, I believe, late 1990s. And don't be just depressed just yet. I'm not going to spend this entire episode griping, because at the end, I will talk about my favorite JDM cars of all time. And guess what? My favorite is a Nissan.
Are you a business owner? Someone interested in the latest news that might affect your business? Then check out the GSMC Business News Podcast, a show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. The GSMC Business News Podcast has you covered.
All right, welcome back. Okay, here's the deal. Right off the bat, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about, you know, what we're going to go over, because I already told you what we were going to go over. I'm just going to say two words. I'm worried. I'm worried about the fact that Nissan quality has been going down in recent years. Not so much in terms of reliability, even though that's been taking a hit too, but I mean in terms of build quality. Now, maybe people are going to say, oh, well, David, you don't even own a Nissan. How are you supposed to testify to Nissan quality? Well, there's a reason why I don't own a Nissan. But my family, however, has owned 5 Nissan products over the years, and we've used 6 of them, because one of them, we don't own them. It's a work vehicle. But, I mean, let me just tell you about our brief history with Nissan in my family. We have owned 5 Nissan products, like I said. My dad had 2 Nissan Sentras, a white one and a red one, a 1992 Nissan Sentra, the ones with the boxy styling and those seatbelts that used to go on the track on the door. Man, I sound so old. But those seatbelts that used to go on the track on the door, when you open the door, it used to move down the track and then you used to take it off. Those were the good days. And a 1994 Nissan Sentra. We used to have a 1995 Altima that was a wonderful car. I grew up with that car. I took baby pictures with that car. I mean, my first road trip was in that car. We took it from New Jersey to Montreal, Canada. That car was great. That car had been bruised, battled, and scarred, but it was old faithful. We loved it. We called it Little Fifi. That was our beloved name for our Nissan Altima. We had a 2004 Nissan Armada. For those of you who are not too familiar with the Nissan Armada, this was the first generation. For 2004, it was called the Nissan Pathfinder Armada, and it was huge. I mean, this thing was so big, you felt like you were sitting inside of a theater if you were sitting in it. It had its own roof line. I mean, it was, the Armada was absolutely huge. Need I say more? A 2008 Infiniti M35X. That is our most recent purchase from Nissan, if you will. And he currently drives, my dad, he currently drives the hopelessly antiquated 2018 Nissan Frontier for work as a company vehicle. I can attest, we've got a history with Nissan. I can attest that the same build quality that Nissans used to have is not the same build quality they have today. Our early Nissans had no issues. In fact, we owned our Altima for 12 years, longer than we had owned any other car. But the later Nissan products were not the same story. Before I get into the specific gripes that I have with some of the Nissan products, let me just tell you all, it is a well-known fact that transmissions in the third generation Altima and the Maxima from that same era, so we're talking about 2003-ish to 2009-ish, we know that those transmissions were absolute trash. I mean, I have literally seen these transmissions give out in front of me. You know, not even at mechanic shops. One I saw in a parking lot, the person had been trying to shift out of gear. I can tell they were trying to shift out of gear. And the car kept on moving forward instead of going backward. I mean, their transmission just decided not to work anymore. Their transmission decided not to do anything. I believe that person had to call a tow truck. And another one in front of a mechanic shop. This woman comes in, same deal. She goes to try to reverse. The car doesn't want to reverse. She has to park it. She has to turn the car off. She has to try it again before the car, after like 5 attempts, finally does something. The first one was an Altima. The second one was a Maxima. I mean, of that same era. So if these transmissions are so notoriously bad that people have literally witnessed them crap out in front of them, I mean, that's not good. I mean, you know, they say there's no such thing as bad press, but yeah, you know, if your transmissions are crapping out and it's well known in the car community that they are crapping out, I would say that's pretty bad press. But moving on, the gripes continue from my point of view. Our 2004 Nissan Armada's interior started falling apart. The cheap, brittle plastic used in the center stack of the dashboard started to crumble at our fingertips. It was a crying shame because we owned the fully loaded LE trim with an entertainment system, Bose speakers, and a navigation system. I mean, you know, as far as equipment goes, this was one of the most well-equipped, you know, vehicles we had ever owned. And we used to own a 2004 Lincoln Navigator. The Nissan Armada LE trim from 2004, from the same year as the Lincoln Navigator, was way more appointed than the Lincoln Navigator as far as entertainment features go. I mean, the thing had 2 screens. It had the navigation screen up front. It had a drop-down screen in the middle. You could hook up a video game console to it. You had a DVD player. You had a navigation system that was ran from a separate DVD player that was located under the passenger seat. You had an automatic tailgate in the rear, which I know may not sound like much, but just to put it into perspective, my teacher's 2009 Nissan Armada didn't have an automatic tailgate in the back. It was manual. And that was 5 years newer in the facelifted version, and it still didn't have what our 2004 LE had. So that was so unfortunate that we had to deal with such poor materials on the inside. And not only that, the exterior, the paint faded horribly, and the cable from the gear to the lever, this is not exterior, this is mechanical, the cable that was controlling the gear shifts from the lever to the transmission snapped and had to be repaired. All of this foolishness happened, get this, before 130,000 miles. That's bad. I don't care how you want to slice it, that's just not good. Cars shouldn't be doing that. Nissans shouldn't be doing that. That's foolishness I expect from Mitsubishi. That's foolishness I expect from Fiat. That's foolishness I expect from Chrysler, not from Nissan. I mean, Nissan, what has happened? Our Infiniti is a really nice looking vehicle, but the ride quality is rough. The road noise is intrusive. The headliner is falling. The paint is fading. The fuel mileage is worse than my Cadillac DeVille. Let me put that into perspective. My Cadillac DeVille had the V8 275 horsepower infamous North Star engine driving the front wheels. They averaged about 16 to 17 miles per gallon, and they only took premium fuel. this Infiniti, after my second Cadillac died and I had to borrow my dad's car for about 3 weeks until we were able to purchase me a new car, consumed fuel probably twice as much as my Cadillac. And that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but let me tell you, I'm not far off. This thing has an all-wheel drive system, and I don't know if it's the all-wheel drive system that makes it so thirsty, but I mean, it's super, super inefficient on gas. I would drive a regular commute in Tampa and just filled up that day and already be down a quarter tank by the time the day was over. And I could drive from Cape Coral to Tampa in my Cadillac on a quarter tank, but I couldn't do a regular commute with the Infiniti on a quarter tank of gas in Tampa. I mean, it was ridiculous. I think this thing averages maybe 15 miles per gallon. And that's if you're driving conservatively. I mean, the fuel mileage is really bad. And all of this is happening before 108,000 miles. This car has 108,000 miles on it right now. All of this stuff, the paint fading, the headliner, the interior, blah, 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 all of that stuff started falling apart, way before 108,000 miles. We've had it for, since the car had about 60-something thousand miles. I mean, this is not a good look for Nissan. The Nissan Frontier, that my dad drives to work, though it's a 2018 model, might as well be from the early 2000s, like the era it came out in and it was designed in. It has a shoddy backup camera that was clearly never intended to be installed in such an antiquated vehicle, and it is hopelessly uncomfortable. I mean, I know it's a work truck. It's not necessarily supposed to be uncomfortable, but even by 2020 standards, it's slightly ridiculous. These gripes make me legitimately concerned about the future of the Z-Car. This is a legendary pedigree of Japanese sports cars, and Nissan, because of their poor quality in recent years, might screw it up and make it unappealing. If not unappealing, at least not as appealing as the new Supra that I already mentioned, its main competitor. This is something that Nissan's going to have to work on, because in recent years, even this current Z-Car, the quality is not that great. I watched a video of Doug DeMuro reviewing, I believe, a special edition of the 370Z. I think it was a Nismo version of it, which is Nissan's tuning company. It was great. He loved it. It handled well. It was a great car, but it was hopelessly outdated. I mean, this thing was I think it was 2018 or something, and there was still a bunch of hard plastics. I mean, the infotainment system was not nearly up to par with what we have on the market today. The design of the interior hasn't really been updated. It looks like something that came out, 11 years ago. It doesn't look like something that's modern. And the fact that the quality control has been so bad, at least not bad in the sense that they're letting their cars literally fall apart before they leave the factory showroom floor, but it's just not as been stringent as it used to be. And it's not been as reliable. It's not been as appealing as it used to be. That's what worries me with Nissan. It seems that Nissan quality has been on a steady decline since their merger with Renault in the late 1990s. I don't know if this is a coincidence, but it seems like they've had a negative effect on Nissan quality over the years. And this may not even be related to Renault, but the whole Nissan lineup all over is just old and hopelessly boring. They seem to be lagging behind their chief rival Toyota in many ways. But the main issue seems to be their lack of pizzazz, so to speak. Toyota has TRD models of several of their cars. Like I mentioned, the Toyota has TRD models of the Avalon. The Avalon, their full-size, luxury sedan that is meant to rival, other luxury, entry-level luxury car companies. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, Toyota's taking risks. Toyota's being not foolish, but Toyota is being cautious, but also taking risks that are well calculated as far as coming out with new exciting versions of their current cars. Like I said, they have a TRD version of the Avalon. Need I say more? But Nissan doesn't seem to have sport variants of their cars. I mean, they've got like the Reserve Platinum models for the really luxurious ones, like the Nissan Titan has a Platinum Reserve model. I believe the new Armada has a Platinum Reserve model. But, it's not able to keep up with the competition. I'm not saying that Z cars have been bad. In fact, Z cars are legendary. Z cars are good. I just question whether or not they'll be able to compete now that Toyota is back in the affordable sports car market with the Supra. The Toyota used to have the Toyota 86, as it was known in Japan, the Subaru BRZ, that was Subaru's version of the Scion FRS, which was how it was known here in America. That was a great car. But now Toyota has purposely come out with the Supra again. This is not just a great car. This is a legendary car. Nissan has been producing their legendary car. Is it legendary enough, or will it continue to be legendary enough to combat Toyota's Supra? That is something that I am not so sure about. Because think of it. The Nissan Z car should be so good at this point for how long it's been in production, since 1969. It should be good, so good at this point that we shouldn't have to worry about Toyota with their new kid on the block after, 20-something years finally bringing back the Supra and actually making a dent in, Nissan's lineup. This shouldn't be a worry. This shouldn't be a fear, because it's the same principle as what happened with the Jeep Wrangler versus the new Bronco. The new Bronco is coming back after 25 years. The new Supra is coming back after almost 25 years. The Wrangler has been in constant production in some way, shape, or form for, holy smokes, several decades now. I can't even count anymore. Same thing with the Nissan Z car. But the Nissan Z car doesn't seem to have lived up to its legacy in recent years. I mean, it's antiquated. It's old. People are getting tired of looking at it. I mean, this is not what legendary sports car dynasties do. This is not what they do. They always keep people on their toes. I mean, look at the new C8 Corvette. They just came out with a mid-engine Corvette because I guess GM started to realize that, look, this Corvette is getting stale. It's not getting interesting anymore. We need to spice it up. We need to come out with a new next best thing that's going to put a wow factor in people's eyes. I mean, Nissan, catch the memo, wake up and smell the coffee. I mean, it's time for you to start doing something real with this. And I'm not going to criticize because it hasn't come out yet, but it better be real. And it better be good when it comes out in order to combat Toyota Supra. So stay tuned for the next segment, in which we go over the long history of the Z car and two other models in Nissan sports car trifecta. Like I mentioned, the Silvia and the Skyline, my personal favorites. And please stay tuned for the last segment, in which I will discuss my personal feelings considering the new Z car, as if though I haven't already said some already, and my top 5 JDM sports cars, or not sports cars, just regular JDM cars of all time.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
welcome back. Before the break, we discussed my concerns about Nissan quality over the years. We'll now talk about the wonderful Nissan sports cars that we've all come to know and love with specific generation by generation history of the Z car. Like I mentioned before, the Z car is in a trifecta of Nissan sports cars. The Silvia, the Skyline, and of course itself, the Z car, or it is also known as the Fairlady Z in the Japanese market, but the name was actually dropped simply to Z and a preceding number, which used to denote engine displacement, but apparently with the new one is going to denote horsepower, when Nissan brought it over to the United States. They feared, and by they I mean Nissan, the Japanese people in charge of Nissan feared that the name Fairlady was not manly enough as compared to names like Mustang, Camaro, Firebird, etc. that many cars in America had at the time. The Silvia, on the other hand, was produced for a very long time, but the last generation was the S15 model that ended production in 2002. The United States got this platform in the form of the 240SX in the mid-90s. It was a competitor to the Honda Prelude, the Mitsubishi Eclipse, and other notable 90s Japanese sports cars. I will say, of the three, the Silvia is one of my favorites, especially the S15 version of the Silvia. I don't see there's that much hype about it in the car community, honestly. The hype seems to all go towards the Skyline, but the Silvia, from my experience driving it in video games at least, and seeing them on the road when I was in Japan, I mean, they are awesome. They are awesome. They are alluring. I mean, I want a Nissan Silvia. And it's a shame that we never actually got the Silvia in the United States. We got a version of the platform that was a 240SX, which I'm sure was a great car. That you see some of them around still. But you know, I kind of wish we had gotten the Silvia here in the United States. But anyways, let me move on to the Z car's history. Actually, the Skyline's history before I mention the Z car. The Skyline was perhaps the highest performance model sports car of the three. The Skyline came in sedan form and in coupe form, including the Nissan Skyline Gtr, which has long been highly coveted, especially in the Americas because they were never offered here, by car geeks of every shape, kind, and creed. The most legendary was definitely regarded as the R34 Skyline GTR, which was made popular in movies like Too Fast, Too Furious, and in video games like Need for Speed, Forza Motorsport, you name it, the Nissan Skyline GTR has been in all of them. And this undying love for the R34 has caused prices to skyrocket, even though they're not even legal for importation to the United States yet. We're still waiting. I believe this generation froze 98 to 2002. So I believe in 2023, they're finally going to be eligible for import because they will meet the 25-year rule in the United States. And I can only imagine that prices and values will only skyrocket even higher when that actually becomes a possibility. So here's the history of the Z car. The Z car was first introduced in 1969, and it would be the beginning of a long family tree. So this is kind of my take on the history of the Z cars. You had the iconic 240Z. The iconic 240Z that ran from 1969 to, I believe, the mid 1970s. This was great. It was classic. It was beautiful. It was small. It was nimble. It was a fair lady, if you will, as it was known in the Japanese market. I mean, this was a really good car as far as performance goes. It wasn't super powerful, but it was well balanced. Inline 6-cylinder engine that was highly able to be tuned and customized. It had a great following, and even today, the people who have them preserve them, and they're absolutely wonderful. They love them. They take care of them. This is the romanticized version of the Nissan Z. This is the romanticized generation. These are the ones that people know. These are the ones that people love. These are the ones that are highly coveted after by car enthusiasts and car collectors. Then you had the 280ZX, which was the second generation. This one has largely been forgotten. I mean, forgive me out there if you have a 280ZX, but you can even tell in video games, in movies, in all sorts of things that other Nissan Z cars, you just can't get enough of them. They're just so dang popular. I mean, this one doesn't seem to have that same following. Where is it? Where is the 280ZX? I haven't seen it anywhere. I mean, while I was doing research for this podcast, that's when I actually remembered that the 280ZX was a thing. I mean, this came out in, I believe, 1978, and the only thing left unchanged from the previous 280Z was the 5-speed manual transmission and a 2.8-liter L28 inline-6 engine. And the entire car was made more luxurious, and, you know, it was becoming more of a grand tourer. If this thing was that revolutionarily different from the first generation 240Z, how come people don't appreciate it as much? I kind of feel sad because I like to think I know my car history, but I forgot that the 280ZX was even a thing. So I guess that's more of the forgotten Z car in a sense. And then we have the technologically advanced 300Z. The 300Z actually came out in two different models. There's another one which is the third generation that came out after the 280ZX. This one was beginning to be not only more luxurious, more technologically advanced, and more sought after. This was a grand tourer. This was a grand tourer from Nissan. I mean, you had the Silvia that was always more sporty and kind of muscly. I know I use the term muscly with, you know, a grain of salt because it's Japanese and muscle cars are typically regarded as being American, but it was a bit more muscly. And the Skyline GTR was just focused on performance. But the Z car was not only performance oriented, but it had such luxury features too. So this was a nice in between, you know, I guess this is a grand tourer, a personal luxury car, things of that sort. If I may ascribe, you know, an American equivalent to the, you know, the 300Z. And then we have the 300Z that was the next generation of the 300Z, which was the really technologically advanced one. I mean, these engines were insane. They were crammed into the engine bays. These cars, this is personally my favorite, I guess my favorite iteration of the Z car. Because they were so laden with technology, however, they didn't age well. At least that's what the common perception is in the car community. I mean, these ones were gorgeous. These ones, in fact, shared their headlights with the Lamborghini Diablo of the era, because Lamborghini didn't source their own headlights, so they borrowed them from Nissan and then had a little piece of paint that covered the top of portion of the headlights that, you know, said Nissan, and they put it on their Lamborghini Diablo, which is a cool bit of history. But these ones were technologically advanced, the most technologically advanced so far, massive engines that were stuffed into the engine bays. They're difficult to work on, but they are awesome. I mean, this one was no longer an inline-6 engine. It was a V6 engine with dual overhead camshafts and produced 222 horsepower, which by today's standards is not that much. But in the time that this thing was alive, in the time that this thing was hitting the roads and leaving the factories, I mean, this was a awesome car. I mean, I think, like I said, I think this is my favorite Z car of them all. It was won as Motor Trend's Import Car of the Year in 1990, as well as one of the top 10 performance cars in Automobile Magazine, honored the 300ZX and the 300ZX Turbo as the design of the year. I mean, this was a huge deal, this 300ZX. This is the Z car that other Z cars hope to be, and I think with the new Z car, Nissan should capture the spirit of the 300ZX from the 90s. The 90s were, a crazy time for Japanese sports cars. I mean, you had the Subaru SVX or something like that. You had the Mitsubishi 3000 GTO. You had the Toyota Supra. You had the Nissan Skyline, the Nissan Silvia, and the Nissan 300ZX. You had, Japanese sports cars out the wazoo, and some companies had more than one sports car offering. This was a great era for cars in general, especially Japanese cars. And I love the fact that the 300ZX has been so fondly remembered as not being necessarily the most reliable, but definitely the most interesting, the most fun, the most technologically advanced for the time, and one of the best Japanese sports cars ever made. Then you had the 350Z. Now, the 350Z is not that special. I know there are some people out there who really love their 350Zs to death, but I hate to burst their bubble. It's just not that special. I mean, it's round. I mean, the other one before it wasn't extremely round. What else is there to say about it? It has a V6 engine. Apparently, it's capable in some trim levels of up to 155 miles per hour. But, watching videos on the 350Z, and it's great that these cars are recent enough that a lot of people still own them. You can watch videos on them. The interior quality is not that great. The car, other than the fact that it performs well, doesn't really do anything else great. It's not great in comfort. It's the 350Z. And it's reminiscent of what Nissan quality has been in recent years. So that makes me kind of sad, but that's really all I have to say concerning the 350Z. The 370Z, on the other hand, is just an updated version of the 350Z. And it looks very similar too. And their engines were very similar as well. So much so to the point that, car tuners many times swap different parts from the different engines onto each other because of how similar they were. 370Z was a slightly larger displacement, as you can tell by the number 370, 3.7 liter V6, whereas the 350Z was a 3.5 liter V6. But other than that, the 370 wasn't that great. I mean, they had different additions. Nismo, of course, tuned it, but the 370Z is sort of insipid. And it's the insipid version that is still alive today as far as the Z car, Nissan's affordable sports car. I mean, yeah, that's what it is. It's built on the same platform as a 350Z, maybe slightly updated. This current generation has been soldiering on since 2009. We're tired of seeing it. Nissan, please come out with something new and interesting. It's not able to keep up anymore. It's antiquated. The interior quality is not up to modern standards as far as their competitors go, and it's time for a change. And of course, we have the elusive 400Z that Nissan claims to be coming out with. This one is mysterious. This one is largely unknown. This one has an aura of mystery behind it. So much so to the point, like I mentioned earlier, we don't know what it looks like. I'm intrigued. For what Nissan decides to do with the 400ZX, or not 400ZX, but 400Z. So stay tuned for the next segment in which I finally discuss what my real personal opinion of the Nissan Z car, the new one, is, and why I discuss that really Nissan should step up their game. And I also discuss my favorite JDM sports cars, or not sports cars, like I said, but JDM cars, of all time. So stay tuned for the next segment after the break.
Do you work in the world of marketing and advertising? Are you a media buyer or the owner of an agency? Have you been looking for a podcast to help stay on top of all the goings-on of those worlds? The GSMC Marketing News Podcast is dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning marketing and advertising. Get the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year, to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast has you covered, whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand.
Okay, folks, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. The new Z-Car. Wow, it's about time. I mean, I keep on complaining. I know I like to complain, but it's about time that Nissan finally announced that they're going to come out with a new Z-Car. It's been 5 ever, longer than 4 ever. Wow, to have a sports car that's still on the market that was introduced in 2009 is unheard of. Actually, I don't know of any other, car company that's in the mainstream as Nissan that's done anything even close to that. This is my honest opinion. As timely as this announcement has come, May of 2020, they said they were going to come out with a new Z-Car. That was, just 3 months ago. As timely as this is, as exciting as it should be, I'm not personally excited. And maybe it's because I'm slightly cynical. But I'm not convinced. The reason why I'm not convinced, if Nissan can let their Frontier be on the market since 2004, what makes us think that Nissan is going to actually come out with a new Z-Car despite the fact that they've announcement? I mean, look at the state of the world. Coronavirus has gripped the country, and the world. That has had an effect on, car companies, because if people are staying home because they can't go to work because there's a pandemic, people are not going to want to buy cars. So as a result, for the first couple of months of this pandemic, you had car companies offering, staggering deals for people who were brave enough to venture out of their houses to go buy a car. So car sales were already down. So Nissan coming out with this, of course, just like Ford, just like all the other ones, they didn't have a crystal ball to say that, 2020 was going to be the year from Hades. But I mean, I'm just not convinced. They haven't been able to keep up with their legacy for as long as the past couple of decades. So yeah, they tease us with this new Z-Car, but maybe I'm just not convinced. Of course, let me not complain too much because I know that's just not sincere. But on the bright side, and if I may play devil's advocate, there is perhaps a reason why Nissan is being so secretive and elusive about the new Z-Car. I will tell you, Nissan, as antiquated as they are, as boring as they've become, they're not stupid. They're not stupid. If they were stupid, they would not have come out with a new Z-Car. They would have been like, these cars don't really sell anymore, blah, blah, blah. We just can discontinue it. It's already stale and old. We can just discontinue it. No, they're actually coming out with a new one. That's very smart. And I think the reason why they may be being so secretive about it is to keep us on our toes. Because think of it. The one that we have now, the 370Z, has been around for a long time. Rumors have begun to circulate about a new Z-Car, maybe for the past 5 or 6 years. And not only that, Nissan obviously knows that there is excitement building up for the next Z-Car. And so in May 2020, they ever so strategically say that, yeah, we're going to be coming out with a new Z car. But they don't give that many details about it. You only see a silhouette of what the Z car is going to maybe look like. The Z car silhouette is vague enough that 3 different car websites have 3 different renderings of what they think the new Z car is going to look like. And the fact that they didn't come out with production numbers, they're not spoiling the surprise in a sense. It's like, have you ever been invited somewhere where you're kind of suspicious because, you may think that your friends have been planning a surprise birthday party, or maybe it's slipped out and you heard some of the details? Nissan is not letting any details of this slip out to the public whatsoever. The only thing that they've known for sure, and that they are letting us know for sure, is the fact that it will have 400 horsepower to live up to the name of a 400Z. Now let's speculate for a little bit. Let's say this thing is lightweight. Let's say this thing has 2 seats. Let's say this thing has, a twin turbo V6 or something ridiculous like that. This might be what revives Nissan as far as them no longer being boring and hopelessly antiquated. This could be huge. And we can't tell how huge it's going to be because Nissan is keeping us on our toes, which, like I'm saying, playing devil's advocate, I don't think is a mistake. I think Nissan is purposely keeping us on our toes. They're wanting us to be excited. They're wanting us to be on edge. They're wanting us to be highly strung about this. For when the moment finally comes out, it's like, oh my gosh, it's finally here. Like, yes. And then it's awesome. It's great. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, it's the bee's knees. It's, it's the cat's pajamas, if I can make that up. I mean, this is probably what it's going to end up being. So part of me, besides my cynical side, is actually super excited to see what Nissan actually comes up with. But here's why I'm salty. I'm North American, in case if you all haven't been able to tell. I was born and raised here in the United States. I've been a car guy for my entire life until I couldn't make vroom vroom sounds with my mouth and my dad got me my first set of toy cars. I mean, I've been a car guy. I'm so sad. The reason why I'm sad is not because the Z cars aren't great. I'm sad because America never got the Silvia and America never got the Skyline. Why stop at just the Z car for the Americans? Why not introduce a Skyline? Why not introduce a Silvia so we can have the legendary trifecta of the Nissan sports cars here in America that I tell you Americans would drive the heck out of them because we love them that much. I mean, people are paying premiums for these cars when they become legal to be imported from Japan into the United States. I don't know. I don't know why we never got them. So the reason why I'm salty is not so much that I don't think the Nissan, 400Z is going to be great. I'm just salty about the fact that we never got the other ones. I mean, why just stop at the Z car? Why starve the American market from the Silvia and the Skyline and only give us the Z car in like one generation of a version of the platform of the Silvia in the form of the 240SX when we could have had all 3 of them? Maybe there was things with emission standards. I mean, I know California is super stringent and some car companies won't sell a car in America because of California because they know they won't be able to sell them in California. I mean, maybe that's the reason why. But if they could somehow manage to get the Z car over here and not have to change it too much terribly, I mean, why couldn't they do the same thing with the Skyline? Why couldn't they do the same thing with the Silvia? I mean, imagine if we Americans could own R34 Skylines that are USDM, United States Domestic Manufacture version of the Nissans that are cool, that are awesome, that are great, that are all the great adjectives that I can ascribe to a car, that we can, tear up our back roads with them, with their all-wheel drive systems. Why couldn't we get a Silvia? Why couldn't we get a Silvia so that we can, have drift cars out of them? Why did we have to be starved and only be given the 370 or just the Z cars in general? I mean, I don't think it's fair. I know life is not fair, but if I could turn back time and then have a talk with the Japanese authorities of Nissan, I only speak broken Japanese, but nonetheless, I would try to have a talk with them if I had a time machine. I'd be like, look, please bring the Skyline and the Silvia to the United States. So, in 2020, David wouldn't be so salty about the fact that even though the new Nissan 400Z is probably going to be great, but he's still salty about the fact that he never got a chance to own the Skyline or the Skyline GTR or the Silvia here in America. So that's those are my gripes, essentially. Yeah, that's basically what I have to say about it. I mean, I wish they didn't stop at the Z car. Unfortunately, they did. And another unfortunate thing is the fact that, look, we've been waiting a long time for the new Z car, and we haven't gotten it yet. And, is it going to come out when they say it's going to come out? Who knows? But I did promise you all that I was going to let you all know and discuss my favorite JDM cars of all time while we're on the topic. So I'm going to start off with number 5, the Nissan Stagea. I know probably nobody knows what that is, but the Nissan Stagea, I found out about it. I know this is going to sound super car geeky of me, on Gran Turismo PSP back in middle school. I found out about the Nissan Stagea because it was offered for sale in the game, obviously, and I bought it and I raced it. And it was awesome. Need I say anything else? It was great. It is a station wagon. I love station wagons, and it can be tuned. I love tuning cars. It is basically a Japanese sports station wagon, which we tend to think of sport wagons as only coming from the Europeans, but look at the Japanese. I mean, the Japanese have some pretty sick station wagon versions of their cars. And this one, even though it wasn't always meant to be a sport wagon, it was actually meant to compete against the Subaru Outback in the Japanese market. The Nissan Stagea is in my sense, romantic. It's like the girl that got away. I mean, we never got it. There was never much hype about it, but I think it's great. I remember last year in Tokyo, right underneath the monorail station, there was a yellow one that passed by, and I flipped out. And, tell me the last time you saw a 6-foot-tall American flip out in Japan over a yellow station wagon. I mean, but I was all over it. I left my group of friends. I chased it. I took a picture of it. I completely spazzed out, and I was completely unashamed. That's how much I love the Nissan Stagea. Number 4. Toyota Crown Royal Saloon, or the Toyota Crown station wagon. Oh my gosh. The Toyota Crown. First of all, I love all Toyota Crowns. I love even the Toyota Crown Comfort Taxi. I mean, the Toyota Crown is, for me, it's like the Japanese Panther platform. I mean, they are everywhere. They are ubiquitous in Japan. Everywhere you go, I've been to Sendai, I've been to Yamagata, I've been to Matsushima, I've been to Yokohama, I've been to Tokyo, I've been to Chiba, I've been to Kanagawa, I've been all over the place in Japan. You see the the Toyota Crown Royal Saloon everywhere. It is what a bunch of the Japanese people drive. It is their comfortable luxury car that's not too expensive, that parts are super easy to find, that they last forever and a day. I mean, this is what I would own if I were in Japan. I drive a Buick. For me, this is the real Japanese Buick. This is the Japanese Panther platform. I mean, these are the affordable, simple, traditional luxury sedans of Japan. And the fact that they come out with a station wagon on top of it, it's even greater. And there's even a Toyota Crown Majesta as well, which is built on the same platform but is a separate model line that's larger and even more luxurious than the Toyota Crown Royal Saloon. And it's great. The Toyota Crown Royal Saloon is wonderful. I mean, to a Japanese person, oh, that's just your regular everyday, entry-level luxury car. To me, it is one of my favorite cars of all time, regardless of it being JDM or not. I can tell you, if it gets to a point where we can import those in the United States, I am definitely importing one. And if I don't import it myself, I will find a place that's imported and buy it off of it. We have number 3, Nissan Silvia S15. I already spoke about the Nissan Silvia. Need I say more? It's romantic. It's great. It is a sports car, and it is one of my favorite sports cars. And then we have number 2, Toyota Century, the Japanese Rolls Royce. I mean, these are the things that big business owners buy. These are the cars that are super floaty, super comfortable, super luxurious, that are not meant for performance, that are meant for cruising, boulevard, straight line comfort. I mean, this is the epitome of Japanese luxury. The fact that it's super reliable, which, I mean, Rolls-Royce and Bentley can't lay a claim to reliability, and the fact that it's super luxurious. If every single idea that went into a luxury car had been culminated and brought to perfection, the Toyota Century is the result of it. I'm convinced. It's reliable. It's built very well. It is purely luxury, not sport by any stretch of the imagination, and it's expensive and it lasts forever, and people love them. There is no reliability issues with them. They are a Toyota. I mean, like I said, this is the culmination of every, principle that goes into a luxury car, be it German luxury, American luxury, or Japanese luxury. This is the culmination of every single principle brought to perfection. It's the Toyota Century. And of course, my number 1 is the Nissan Skyline GTR, specifically the R34 model. I think every single car guy gawks over this car. Like I said, from every single size, shape, creed, background in cars, every man I know and every woman I know who is into cars loves the R34 Skyline GTR. And if they don't know that they love it, once they find out about it, then they will love it. I think it's impossible not to love this car. It is legendary. This was Paul Walker's car in Too Fast and Too Furious. Need I say more? So there we have it. This is the end of our spiel on the new Z car. We talked about what is to be expected, what we don't know, what we do know about the new Z car. We spoke about Nissan's concerning quality over recent years. We spoke of a brief history of the Z car as well as other sports cars from Nissan. And I told you what my thoughts are and my top 5 favorite JDM cars, which means Japanese domestic manufacturer cars, of all time. So thank you for listening to the GSMC Car Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. And if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the GSMC Car Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type GSMC into your favorite podcast app to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Please subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed today's episode.